You're listening to Docs Outside the Box, episode 39.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry. You're getting real live insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nee Darko.
What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee Darko, the Doc Outside the Box, and welcome back to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. As usual, got a great one for you, but before we get to that point, got a couple of reviews that I want to talk to you about. This time, actually, I got to show some love to the folks who leave me reviews on the website, who leave comments at the bottom of the podcast episode. So this one is from Giovanni, I think, and this was on episode 37, and he or she said, "This excellent podcast was exactly what I needed to hear. Keep up the great work, Dr. Darko." Javon, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, but either way, thank you so much. This is a fist pump through the podcast. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I hope you stay subscribed and continue with the feedback. The next one is from Nina, and she made a comment on episode 36, and she says, "Great episode. Learned a lot about tax savings and ways and reasons to transition from a W-2 to 1099 position. Thanks for sharing." Nina, once again, another fist pump through the podcast. Appreciate the comment. Appreciate the feedback. I hope you keep listening. I hope you subscribe. And as always, everyone, you could always leave me feedback. I think the best way to leave feedback is through Apple Podcasts. The link is in the show notes. All you have to do is go to www.docsotb, that's DOCSOTB.com, and just click on any of the episodes. If you go to the bottom of the show notes, there are 3 links there where you can subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Stitcher Radio. But if you go to Apple Podcasts, just click on that, and you can leave a quick 5-star review. It'll be greatly appreciated, and it helps the show move up the rankings. So thank you again. And as always, you know how you can reach me. You can reach me via various methods: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or email. Just go to Docs Outside the Box, docsotb.com, and you can find all of those social media links there. And then one other thing I want to talk about, one other housekeeping thing, is SpeakPipe. So if you've been to the website recently, you know that on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a little tab that says Ask Me a Question. And seriously, if you click on that tab, you can go to SpeakPipe and you can leave me a voicemail, and it'll come directly to my email, and I will hear your voicemail, and you can ask me any question that you want, and I'll answer it. So one thing that I want to do differently, though, is I want to do some on-the-show coaching, if you guys are game to it. So I like to keep my ears to the streets. I like to stay grounded. But I also know that a lot of you all, if you're listening to the show, you want to live outside the box. And although I bring really great guests to the show, I always make sure that I bring guests who are on their way up the arc, people who are very easy to be relatable to. But sometimes, I'm not going to lie, sometimes the guests, even at this point, may even be at a point that some people can't relate to. And that's okay. That's fine. So I've decided that I'm going to meet you all halfway. Those who feel that way, I'll meet you halfway. Okay. If you're listening to this show and you want to live outside the box, but you're not sure exactly how to do so, and that could be via various ways, right? You can want to live outside the box financially, from an insurance standpoint and how you do your life insurance, your disability insurance. From a career standpoint, should you go and become an independent contractor, live that locums life, or should you take an employed position? Whatever it may be, hit me up on SpeakPipe, leave me a voice message, and leave me your information, and let's do a coaching session together on the show, okay? I may even put on another expert, so it'll be me, another expert, and you on the show Don't worry, I'll keep all of your information anonymous. But I think this will be a fun, different way to do things, something that I haven't done before and something that nobody else really is doing on podcasts. So if you're game, hit that button and let's do this. All right. So on to my next episode, my next great guest. So I want you all to imagine flying to every corner of the world on someone else's bank account. Right? Sounds pretty fly, right? So maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration for my next guest, but my next guest is Dr. Nadine White, and she pretty damn near comes close to that. And whether she's traveling from Thailand to South Africa, Dr. White's experiences, her travel hacks, her guides, they've all been documented on her popular lifestyle blog, The Sophisticated Life. Now, she's a self-proclaimed blogger by day, physician by night. She's a pediatrician, but she's showing how she's living outside the box by showing her artistic side, by blogging as well as traveling. She also performs a lot of reviews on anything that's travel related, from various hotel rooms, hotels in general, to even luggage. So outside of her blog, you can find a lot of her writings. You can find her writings in widely acclaimed media, including the Huffington Post, Essence Magazine, TravelZoo.com, TravelNoir.com, and TravelChannel.com. She's all over the place. And on this show, we're going to learn more about Dr. White, as well as her background, as well as how she started the blog. So things that I want you all to pick up on this show are why and how she started blogging, the different types of advertising networks that are out there for people like you who are interested in blogging and want to, kind of monetize your blog, the different types of and different areas of places that she likes to travel. And we also get to hear what the favorite place she likes to visit to. One thing that she never forgets when she travels, and of course with all of my guests, we're going to find out how she answers hashtag I'm not just a doc. So without further ado, I present Dr. Nadine White with The Sophisticated Life. Dr. Nadine White from The Sophisticated Life website, blog, travel extraordinaire, doctor, what other slashes am I going to put after your name? But thank you for being, I'm good. Thanks for being on Docs Outside the Box, girl. It's about time I got you on this show.
I know. I'm so glad that we've connected.
Oh, yeah.
So glad.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to talk to you.
Are you in the United States? Because I got to ask, because you're all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I'm in the United States. I'm actually at home in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite town.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm here for a solid month. Well, I was here for a solid month. I'm off to Savannah on Monday for the Food and Wine Festival there. But yeah, so I had 3.5 weeks at home.
I mean, is that the longest stretch? Is that the longest stretch you've had in a while? Because you're oftentimes you're working and then you're on the road and you're either out of the country, in a different part of the United States. So,
right, I average probably once a month, even if it's even a road trip within the United States. So, I'm usually doing something at least once a month. So it keeps me busy. But I love the balance of I'm a pediatric hospitalist here in Atlanta. And nocturnist, actually. So I like the combination. I work my shifts and then I'm off to destinations unknown, or usually with me it's known because I plan very far in advance.
Okay. So Dr. White, before we get a little too into the interview, let me ask then. Okay, so you say you're a nocturnist. You work or you live in Atlanta. You work in Atlanta. What medical school did you go to? What residency? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. So my family is Jamaican from Jamaica. And I lived there till I was 10 and then moved to New Jersey when I came to the United States. I always went back and forth. But so for medical school, I went to University of Virginia for college. And then for medical school, I went back to New Jersey. And it's now back to being Rutgers. At the time, it was UMD&J, Robert Wood Johnson Medical School.
9 different letters back there.
Yes. So I spent time in New Brunswick and then in Camden for the second 2 years of medical school. And I always loved Washington, D.C. I think because I went to college near Washington, D.C., I had the desire to go back to that area. So I did my residency at Georgetown. And after pediatric residency, I stayed in the D.C. area for 5 years working for Kaiser Permanente as a pediatrician. So that's kind of like my initial background and leading into medicine, so to speak.
So what happened afterwards? Afterwards you got, you become a resident, or excuse me, you're done with residency. You're an attending. You're making the big bucks. What happened afterwards? Talk about that. Come on
Yeah.
now.
Well, what's funny? Well, now, well, back then, I don't even know what salaries are now. I definitely wasn't big bucks, but, definitely comfortable. But I moved to Florida for a while because my mother retired there. I did not like Southeast Florida. Sorry for anybody who's from there. Um, so I practiced there, and I was in private practice there for about 2.5 years, and as I was in DC. But at the time, it was becoming just too stressful. I was working 6 days a week, seeing 40 patients a day, working late nights, being on call. Back then, there wasn't really a hospital, pediatric hospital, so to speak. So we saw patients in the office and in the hospital. And so, ironically, when I decided I was looking for other options in Florida, I came across the option to be a hospitalist. So my first job there as a hospitalist, I actually worked 24-hour shifts, and I did like 8 24-hour shifts a month.
That's tough. That's really
Yeah,
tough.
it was tough, but I actually liked it because it was 2 shifts a week, maybe. And sometimes if you're going on vacation, you may only do 7 shifts in the month. But, there was actually downtime. You got to take naps and, after, round during the day, and then you may be up at night. But I actually enjoyed it because that was the first time I had flexibility in my schedule to do other things, so you could get 5 days off or 4 days off, and it wasn't that tough.
So
And
then
then I
you
had another hospital.
No, go ahead, please. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. I had another hospitalist job after that was more traditional, where I was rounding during the day and taking call at night and working weekends, which I actually did not like as much. That was also in Florida, just because, again, there was less flexibility in terms of time off to do other things. Um, and in my job now, I moved to Atlanta for my current job, and I came here as a nocturnist. And so I work 12-hour shifts at night. And that's also tough. It takes me a little while to recover after I have a stretch of nights. But again, it allows for the flexibility to have time off to go to a food and wine festival in Savannah next week.
See what I'm saying? But like, how do you see? That just rolls off your mouth because like obviously you just go and you make it happen. That's amazing. So look, before we get into like your secondary life, like your amazing life, not to say that your life as a nocturnist is not amazing, but before we get into that, tell us about Nadine. Tell us about Nadine before you became a doctor. Who was she? Where are you from? Where you grew up? All that stuff.
Yeah, so my family actually came to America. My parents came to America when they were pretty young, like in the 20s. And then after that, a lot of different family just followed. I was actually born in New York City, but I went back and forth between New York, Florida, and Jamaica for the first 10 years. But I lived primarily in Jamaica and went to school there. And then after, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor, actually. We had a family friend who was our pediatrician in Jamaica. And so I actually used to spend a lot of time at her office after school and just kind of hanging out there, even if I didn't have an appointment. So she was my first influence. And then my grandmother wanted a doctor in the family. And if you're familiar with West Indian families, then, she kind of put that in my head over and over again that I was going to not just be a doctor, but be a pediatrician. So, but, that was always my goal. That was always my focus. And so I went through school knowing that's what I was going to do. And thank goodness, once I actually started doing it, I loved it. I loved medicine. I loved kids. I thought about OBGYN for a little while in medical school, but kind of stuck through with pediatrics. And yeah, so that had always been, I went to college at 17, medical school at 21, did residency from 25 to 28.
Did you take any break? You didn't take any breaks.
I took no breaks, and I actually skipped a grade when I moved from Jamaica to
smarty
New
art.
Jersey.
Smarty art. All right. Okay,
So,
Dr. Nadine, I see you.
So, it was like my entire life till, I guess basically 30, because then back then too, there wasn't really a lot of options. Like you went to residency I finished residency in 1999. So, I mean, everyone then just went into a private practice. There weren't all these options that there are now, which I think is great. So yeah, I just went into full-time private practice after that. So literally, I have been in school or working my entire life. I have never taken a break in any way.
So,
And
so you got this like side, like literally different identity where you are traveling all over the world. Obviously, that's the reason why you're on this show, because you're a doc outside the box. But how did you get into that? Like, tell us about that. Because I know even when we did a pre-interview, you told us that, your mother had a very large influence on you traveling, and take us back to that. Tell us about that.
Yes. So, like I said, my parents came to America when they were pretty young, and we were fortunate enough that one of my aunt's uncles owned a travel agency in Brooklyn, New York. They were the first people in my family to kind of come here and do well, and so my mother kind of did some work with them. I was able to travel with them all around the world as a travel agent, and back then that was like a big deal. You got really great deals to travel all over the world as a travel agent and go to different conferences. So she went on big trips at least twice a year. And I mean, everywhere from Kenya to Budapest to Australia. And so I grew up, and she would come home and she'd bring these, dolls from all these different countries. And she would tell me all about the countries. My mom was extreme, like when people tell me, oh, you're smart, you're a doctor. I'm like, no, no. My mother was extremely smart. She spoke like 3 languages and just
Wow.
really was very one of those people that could answer anything on Jeopardy. And so she was very fascinated with history and culture. And she visited, I think, 3 places prior to them having the Olympics. Like she was in Athens when they were building for that, for the games, to come back there. So, it was very exciting for me that she would come back with all these, amazing cultural gifts and stories and historical things from all these places. And when I was 15, I went on my first big trip because she arranged for me to go with her friends to Hawaii. And it was just amazing, amazing. Because before then, I had traveled around America a lot and to Jamaica, obviously, but that was like a really big deal to go that far away. And it just inspired me to want to see all the things that she talked about. And I got to go to some places with her. Like we went back to Hawaii together. We went to Paris together. And so it was great to experience things with her. But then everywhere that she's told me about, I wanted to go and see for myself. So she was definitely my travel inspiration. And I kind of made a decision when I finished residency to visit at least one new place every year. And that could be in America or internationally. And so initially it was a big deal to just get to one new place every year. And then obviously as I, started paying off my loans and having a little bit more room financially, I started going to like several new places every year. And it's really exciting for me to go. I went to Thailand this year for the first time, and that was one of the places my mom loved, loved, loved and raved about. And it's really a great feeling to actually see these places in person that she always talked about. So I would say I really started traveling regularly after residency. So initially it was just trips to Cancun or, different islands. I went on cruises, and then I started taking bigger trips to Greece and Spain. I did a bunch of 2 trips to Italy, and then I've been to Africa. So it just it's escalated, I guess, over the years in terms of how far I've gone and what I've seen.
When did you start to realize that, I need to start writing about this. I need to start documenting all these trips.
Right. So again, actually, this also goes back to my mom in a sense. I lived in Florida partly because she was there, and she passed away in 2011. And I was living in
Sorry to
Florida
hear
at the
that.
time. Thank you. Thank you. And working, and I was single, and I needed something else to do, like I needed something else to occupy my time. And I've been fortunate. Like my girlfriends all love all the same things that I do: going to museums, going to food and wine festivals. They love wine regions and travel all the time. So initially the blog was an idea that I came up with where my friends would all contribute. I didn't even know what a blog was, to be honest with you. I started a website that was going to be like an online magazine where quarterly we would update it, just kind of like a magazine with articles on what everybody was doing in different places, or, traveling, music, art, culture, everything. And initially it started out that way, but of course, it's tough. Everybody's busy with their own lives, and it was hard to get people to contribute articles, even if, quarterly. And during that time, I started networking a little bit on Facebook and got introduced to some of the blogging support groups. And I
Which
realized,
is huge.
Yeah, and back then, this was probably when I moved to Atlanta in 2012. I kind of rebranded and redid the site in 2013, and I realized, wait a minute. So what I'm doing is actually like blogging, except I should just focus on what I want to do and not have it be. It was initially like maybe 5 articles quarterly, and one was from me and 4 were from my friends. And so actually one of my original friends that started, with me, she's still a regular guest contributor. She's the one I went to Thailand with, and she wrote one of the Thailand articles. But I realized I really needed to take ownership of it and focus on my brand. And I learned all of that basically doing Facebook groups. And then so I redid the site. It was always called The Sophisticated Life, but it just became basically just like a weekly blog. And I write, the 98% of the articles on it. And so, yeah, so it started really as just this outlet, something fun and exciting to do. I have a friend who is in the design business, and she came up with the logo. We had different names, and another friend who was owned her urgent care center is the one who actually introduced me to her web developer who developed the site. And again, the way that I did it back then was much harder than how people now do it in starting a blog. So it was definitely tougher back then.
Oh, probably back then you needed to know the language and all those different things. Now it's just drag and drop now.
Exactly. No, and I knew nothing about the technology and hosting and getting my own host. I had to transfer everything. So it was definitely a process. And even now I have people who help me with the technical part. But my passion has always been about writing travel stories and sharing great pictures. And as I started doing it, I realized there was such a need because people really want to know what places are like. They think it's scary, it's too far, it's too expensive. How do they treat Black people there? What is the food like? Am I going to find anything to eat? And so all these questions that I started getting, I realized there was really a need for people to see not just what the place was like, but just logistics of how to get there. So I started even writing planning guides, travel planning guides, like, okay, if you want to go to this place, this is what you need to know. When do you go? What's the weather like? How much does it cost? What's the food like? And so, yeah, it really, it kind of, between my readers and followers and what I like to write about, it just kind of developed over the past few years into what it is now.
So it's kind of just taken, it's just kind of gone on its own. It's kind of exploded because you're all over the place now. Like you're on Huffington Post, you're on all these different digital media. Come on now, girl. You gotta brag a little bit about yourself now. Come on. I only have the best on the show, right? Come on.
Yeah. No, I've been fortunate. I am a freelance contributor for Huffington Post. I've been on Travel Channel and Travel Zoo and MSN I contributed to this year. I've contributed to Essence. I was in Essence magazine 2 summers ago. Well, yeah, last summer of 2016. So it's been really exciting. I was in Sheen magazine this year.
So when did you, let's hear about that transition then. When did you, okay, you go on Facebook, you learn about how to blog, you rebrand, you change the way in which you're writing. When did you go from that point to realizing like, oh snap, like people are expecting me to write on occasion and people really enjoy what I'm doing. And now like Essence is calling, Huffington Post it wants something. Like, tell us about that transition.
Yeah. So, and I will this is my number one advice to anybody who wants to pursue this is, it really goes back to your brand. And so you shouldn't really create a fake brand. So for instance, when I actually had to really think about The Sophisticated Life because I thought people were going to think, oh, she's stuck up. She thinks she's bougie, blah, blah, blah. But sophisticated actually means to be altered by education and experience. And I love that definition because that to me is what travel does for me. Like the more I learn, the more I experience, the more educated I feel I am. And so I really write about all the things I do anyway. So for instance, if there was absolutely no blog, what would Nadine be doing? All the same things.
You'd be traveling.
And so right. I would be traveling. I would be eating at nice restaurants. I'd be going to Napa Valley. I'd be, so everything about my brand and what I write about is me. It's my life. And so ultimately I'm a travel, food and wine blogger, but that could all be summed up by being a lifestyle blogger because I really do blog about my lifestyle. And so I only write about things or accept things that fit into my brand and fit into things that I would do normally in my life. And so I say that to people because people think it's easy to jump on different bandwagons. Like, oh, I want to travel, so I'm going to be a travel blogger.
Right, because people are listening to this show and they're like, I want to be just like Dr. White. How do I do this?
So tell us
Right. No,
about that. Yeah, because you're about to
people,
talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, you have to be authentic. And I think so leading from that into how I've been approached by different brands. I've worked with Marriott. I just worked with the St. Regis. I've worked with a lot of major brands but they all, I think, see that I'm authentic in what I write about. And I have a passion about, with what I'm writing about. And so I think that's part of why people will then approach you is when they see that obviously your blog has to look good, the writing has to be good, the pictures have to be good. But beyond that, they have to really believe that you're speaking in your own voice and that you're being authentic in what you're sharing to your readers and your followers. And I think that's what's happened. So in terms of a lot of the opportunities, sometimes people just find you, honestly, and I have no idea how people just find you online. I mean, obviously, now when you Google certain things, my blog and my name will come up. And so people sometimes will just approach you because they found your blog, they love it. But most of the times when you're starting out, you join influencer networks. So there's networks that have certain requirements in terms of followers and readership, but they will connect you with brands. They'll connect you with wine brands, with food brands, with hotels that will want to work with you based on having, a commonality. So that's how I first started getting quote unquote like say even paying gigs was joining these influencer networks that connected you to different brands, and the brands will, let's say, pay you to just post something on social media, or they'll pay you more if you do a blog review about a product. um, and
Or
then beyond that, the other
is it
uh-huh.
easy to get? Is it easy to get into these influencer
so
networks?
so there's some that will take new bloggers, and so you don't really have to have a certain following, or so all bloggers have to have Google Analytics, and so that shows you how many views you get per month, for instance. So some of them have higher criteria. So the more followers you get, the more readers you get, then you obviously can get into the bigger networks, and they're the ones that pay the most. Just like ads on your site. So I'm part of an ad network, and you have to have a certain number of readers, and to be able to get into that ad network. But then once you're in, and they put their ads on your site, then you can make money that way. Um, and again, for me, it's never been about the money, but blogging is there is money involved with maintaining the site, and social media and technology support and all those things. So that's where the monetization comes in for me. But for people who really, really want to make a lot of money um, on blogs, they have to realize that you have to have the readership. You have to have like, for instance, you'll see an application and it'll say you have to have at least 5,000 Twitter followers or 10,000 Instagram followers. So a lot of these
Damn.
have
Are you serious?
oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh,
A lot of them will have requirements that you have to meet in order for them to even work with you. That being said, again, there's some like beginner networks that will pay, or they'll give you free things for you to write about it. And when I first started, I'll be honest, I did that. Somebody mailed me something for free that I may like a travel bag, and I wrote a blog post about it. Now the networks I'm in, they don't expect you to do anything like that for free. They'll send you the product, but you'll also get paid to write about it. So
I
hopefully that
got you.
kind of makes sense. And then
So humble
you also,
beginnings, right?
right, exactly. So
Yeah.
it just kind of, and then beyond that, then the other aspect is pitching. And people who are new to blogging probably will hear this over and over again. So you can get your own opportunities by just pitching to brands, pitching to hotels, pitching to airlines. You have to have what we call a media kit, which is like a CV for doctors. And it lists all the people that you've worked with. It lists what you're offering. It lists, you know, what your readership is, what your followers are like. So, for instance, if you go into my Google Analytics, you'll see that most of my followers are women. Most of them are in their 30s. Most of them are in America. So, if a brand is trying to reach that demographic, then that works, for them. Then they'll want to work with me. And so you put all of that in your media kit, and you can send that to different people that you personally want to work with. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But obviously, it's great if you make a pitch to something or someone, and then they're like, oh, yeah, great. We'd love to work with you. That's basically the different. People always ask me, how do you make money blogging? And it's by ads. It's by something called affiliate links. And in terms of people doing that, where you may write a travel gift guide and you'll have links in there to your Amazon store. So if people buy stuff from your store, they'll make a little money. And then you'll make a little money. And then it's by being part of these influencer networks and then also by pitching. For me, because again, monetization is not a huge part of why I do this at all. It's for the experiences. And so if somebody says, Nadine, we want you to come to, Santa Barbara, which I went to last year, and we love to host you. And so we'll give you tours, place to stay, and that's something I would do anyway, then I will do all of that and write about it and give my honest review, but they don't have to pay me because that trip alone is pay.
So you ever felt pressure to write something like really good just because like they flew you out and they wine and dine you?
Right. So I've had the opposite happen recently where I got something for free and the agreement was for me to write a review and I didn't think it was great. And so that was tough, and so, yeah, you have to deal with that where if something isn't, I would never want to be dishonest with my readers, and promote something that I didn't enjoy myself or didn't meet my standards. So I'm picky about the things that I agree to do. I'm with who I agree to work with or places I agree to go to. But that's only happened once or twice. And then usually I'll make some kind of adjustment with the post and say, okay, this is how you'll have a good experience with these tips. And I put information in there that I didn't know ahead of time that would have made my experience better. So I share that with my readers. I've gone places that, I may have been hosted in a hotel that I wouldn't really stay in myself probably. And so I'll talk to them about that and say, well, I'll put where I stayed, but I won't do a whole hotel review on a place that doesn't fit my brand that I wouldn't have stayed in on my own, if that makes sense. But I'll link and say, this is where I stayed while I was experiencing all these other wonderful things in this place. So yeah, you learn a lot of that as you go. And I've definitely had people help me along the way, other bloggers that had attained success. And so, yeah, that has it's definitely networking is a huge part of it. And having great support groups is a great part of it. And obviously, depending on what you want to do, for me as a hospitalist, it's allowed me the flexibility to do a lot of these things that if I had a, 9 to 5 days a week, every week, then I wouldn't be able to do all of these things. So I'm very grateful that I have the flexibility to do all these things.
What's your most favorite place?
My husband would probably prefer if I stayed home.
Say that again?
A little more. I said my husband would probably prefer if we stayed home a little bit more than we do. But yeah, he's gotten a bit used to things being a little hectic.
Well, what's your favorite place to visit?
So one of my things, and I'm trying to do this going forward, is like, I just went to Paris for the second time. It was my husband's first time. I tend to go new places because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to see that. I want to do that. And I don't do a lot of repeat places. And I'm trying to change that because I'm also trying to do a little bit more slow travel. So we were in Paris for 8 nights. And I have to say, being there for the second time, I loved it even more than the first time. I mean, just absolutely loved it. And I've been to South Africa twice, and that's another place of mine. That's just.
I heard it's a long flight.
It is, but from Atlanta, you can take Delta, goes right to Johannesburg. So it's like 15 hours going and 16 coming back. So it's long. Wow. But it's so worth it because the country.
Ted hoses and Lovenox, girl.
Yes. The country is just so huge, and actually the different cities in South Africa are all very different and very interesting. And so even though I've been twice, it's a place that has a lot to explore, and it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And like I said, I went to Thailand for the first time this year, and that was amazing. I mean,
why is everybody going to Thailand? Because I've been following a lot of this, that whole quote unquote like digital nomads, and
a lot of them there.
A lot of people who are traveling all over the world, they always say Thailand is the best place to be. What is up with Thailand? Tell us about it.
I will say, so they call it the land of smiles, and I got there and I could not believe the hospitality of the people in Thailand. I mean, to the point where we were there for like 10 days. And by the 8th day, we heard like yelling on the street. We knew immediately that it wasn't someone Thai, like, because they are so humble and hospitable, and they're always smiling and sweet. So that was one of the things. I mean, the people were just so warm. I love all the people that I met there. The other thing, it's the cheapest place I've ever been. I thought South Africa was cheap until I went to Thailand, to the point where I felt bad when somebody told me the cost. And I did the calculation in my head, and I'm like, wait, that's only like 50 cents. Like, how can I pay someone 50 cents for something? So it's incredibly cheap. And it's, again, it's gorgeous. And we went to 3 cities. So Bangkok is definitely a city, and I'm a city girl. So I love Bangkok. You have the rooftop bars and lots of Michelin star restaurants and just a lot of temples, the palaces. I loved it. But then you have Chiang Mai, which is in the northern area, which was much more like not a forest, but very, just lush, just gardens everywhere. And you're up in the mountains, and it's cooler and very like neighborhoody. Like you just felt like you were in someone's neighborhood back home, even though you were in Thailand. So that looked and felt completely different. And the food in all these areas is also different. They have their own little special types of cuisine, even though it's, still all delicious. And then we went to Phuket, which we went to Phi Islands. And so that was also very different in terms of, just big, huge mountainous islands and crystal blue water. And it was amazing. I ate, people were asking me what I ate when I was there. I said, from breakfast, lunch, dinner, I ate Thai food all day, every day. Never got sick of it, never got sick. And everything was just delicious and cheap. And yeah, so those would probably be, and I wrote a whole blog post on the 10 reasons why I love Thailand. And
I'll link to that in the show notes too.
oh, awesome. Yeah, so it's popular we met a lot of digital nomads in Chiang Mai. And again, I think they love it because it just feels like you're in a neighborhood. I mean, I met up with one of my friends who's a digital nomad there, and she took us around, and we just walked around her neighborhood, sat outside and ate. And there's a lot of outdoor cafes in Chiang Mai. Walked down to the mall, and I mean, I felt safe. I know people have said different things, but I felt safe the entire time I was there. We took tuk-tuks and did Uber, jumped in an Uber to go places. And so, no, it was a really, really great experience. So yeah, now.
Speaking of dangerous, I wanted to get on it because I know you said obviously you felt very safe in Thailand. What's the most dangerous place you ever been to in the world?
Oh boy. I don't consider any place I've been to really very dangerous.
How about this?
I
how about
say,
this? Would you ever go? Is there a place that you would never go back to? How about that?
Not that I can think of offhand.
Really?
I will tell people no, there's nowhere that I've been that I've hated. But I will tell people that Johannesburg, you have to be careful. I mean, and I only say that to say that I was fortunate to be with my husband's. We went there for his job, and so we got to spend a lot of time with locals. And we were going to just go walking around, downtown Johannesburg, and they got a little nervous. And they were like, let's send some locals with you. And I did some tours with some locals there. And, they say they don't feel like it's any different from what they've heard in America. But then he told me a story about his parents' house just got, they broke into his parents' house with guns and stole everything. And so I would definitely say you should be, just like anywhere, you need to be careful. I don't just go wandering out by myself at night anywhere,
Got you.
But I have definitely heard stories while I've been there and then since coming home as to things that have happened to people there. Right now, people are telling you to be extra careful. Like if you land in the airport there, especially at night, to not just jump in an Uber from the airport to your hotel. So that's someplace I think you have to be a little bit more cautious. And if you know anybody there, it was probably even more helpful for them to take you around. And pick you up from the airport and drop you off and things like that. So that's only a place, but there's really nowhere I've been that I would never go back to. I mean, I've even been to Cuba and I loved Cuba. I felt very safe in Cuba. We spent a week there touring the island and it was amazing. There have been places I've been a little bit disappointed, but nowhere that I felt unsafe enough that I wouldn't go back to.
I thought I'd be able to cause some controversy on this show, but I guess
I'm very much I'm so excited when I'm in a new place and I just want to meet the people and eat the food. And, so I'm so caught up with all of that I don't focus in on, what I've heard about. I try and have my own experience, in other words.
Okay. Well,
And I
Dr. White.
just go by what people say.
Well, Dr. White, we're getting towards the end of the interview, so it's time for some quick, fast questions where I
Okay.
ask you any type of question. You tell me the first thing that comes off of your dome. Don't think too much about it. You ready to do this?
Okay.
All right. What's one thing you want listeners to get from this podcast?
Oh, that's easy. Just to live your best life and do all the things that you're passionate about. Don't let anybody put you in a box. No
That's
pun
what I'm talking
intended.
about. Yeah,
And
yeah. Actually, pun is intended, girl.
people tell me, and especially my family and friends didn't get it at first. They're like, "But you're a doctor. Like, why are you doing this blog thing?" Well, why not? Like, do anything and everything that you have the ability to do that you're passionate about. So that would be my number one thing I would want people to get out of this.
Love that answer. Love it. Give us a quick tip on how to get an upgrade either on a flight or on a hotel, because I know you've been upgraded. So hook us up.
Well, with hotels, I always tell people it never hurts to just ask. Always email. Granted, for blogging it, you're in a different sphere, so you're emailing the marketing department, the PR department, to work with them and get upgrades in that way. But just for anyone else, a layperson, I just always say just ask. It never hurts to ask ahead of time when you're checking in. You just never know. For airlines, that's a little bit tougher. I mean, obviously, if you have mileage plans, then you can leverage that. And when the flight's taking off, when it's, they have available seats, it never hurts to really ask. But, for airlines, it's a bit tougher. I always tell people to try and have some kind of mileage account with your home airline or a credit card or something that you can use, use for upgrades. So that's what I would recommend probably for airlines.
Okay, so you work in a hospital, you're busy taking care of children and sometimes even sick children, and then you go and you travel all over the country as well as all over the world, and then now you're blogging and you have, obviously it's a business. Like, how are you able to balance everything? Give us a life hack that you're using to become more productive.
Let me tell you, my notes in my iPhone, people may think that's funny because I know there's a lot of fancy schedulers, but my iPhone notes, I don't know what I would do without that. So any single thing that pops into my mind, that could be from a blog idea. I'll write it down with, a little list of things that I come up with. I just grab it all the time and make notes about things. I have obviously a calendar where I have all my schedule of events, because besides my work shifts that are irregular every week, I have events that I go to every week. So I definitely have to keep a good calendar in terms of not, making sure nothing conflicts. But in terms of ideas, in terms of deadlines, I highly depend on my iPhone notes. I'm not going to lie.
Love it. Okay, so before you go on a trip,
Yes.
what's the one thing that you always have to take with you?
Oh, man, besides my phone, well, obviously phone, passport comes to mind. Um, you know, there's nothing. My phone now is just like everything, because even like guidebooks and everything I download on my phone. So,
Right.
obviously, there have been times I've been packing. I'm like, wait, what about the passport? And more recently, I always bring like a little, almost like a little medical kit. So I always tell people, if you're on prescription medications, if you're on used over-the-counter things a lot, a little first aid kit, it's always helpful to have that with you, because when you're in foreign countries, they may not have the exact same drug that you take, even if it's just your allergy pill. So, and then I've been in countries where the pharmacies, they're closed on Saturdays or they're closed after 2 or 3 p.m. So now I have a whole drawer of things that I just automatically pack that whole drawer when I'm traveling. It has my headsets, my blanket, my scarf, but I've now did a little medical kit. And so I'll just bring all that with us, so that, you catch a cold when you're abroad, I'll have like, little over the counter pills for a cold in there. So just little basic things like that. It's just good to have. I remember we were in South Africa and I got a really, really bad cold, and the pharmacies were closed, but the hotel was amazing because they had somebody deliver cold medicine to the hotel.
What?
In South Africa, I swear. So, I mean, they do have services there that we don't really have here, but we couldn't find a pharmacy that was open, and they called somewhere and they delivered the medicine that night. So I've learned from those experiences to just kind of bring my own of everything in that kit. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
actually working on the ultimate guide for international travel because things that people forget to do, like calling their credit card companies. If you're going to be gone for long, you can even call your cable company and get that, postponed so you're not paying for time that you're not here. So that's one of my goals to work on. That will be out by the end of the year, and it'll be something like a PDF or a printable list that people can just use every time they're traveling to check off and make sure they're packing everything and doing everything they need to before they leave.
That's a great idea because I am the number one person who forgets everything at home. So,
It's
you
so
know,
easy to do.
uh,
So easy to do. Like you mentioned, even the socks when you're traveling, compression socks for long flights. People forget to do that. So yeah, again, when the medical, I'm still a doctor, so there's definitely things medical that translate back into the blog and travel, and so I want to really share all that with people coming up.
hmm. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you have given yourself as a pre-med?
Wow, as a pre-med, maybe not so much that I can think of as pre-med, but
As a
I
med student?
yeah. So I tell people
Let's do
now,
that.
like yeah, as a medical student, deciding on whatever specialty you want to do, and you can picture yourself practicing 20, 25 years from now, and not just something that you're going to make quote unquote lots of money, because we know how that goes. You just like with the blog. I mean, with medicine, I chose pediatrics because I know that even at 4 a.m, I would not get sick of seeing a baby. So, I really try and stress that to medical students to pick a career that if you really love medicine and you plan to practice for a long time, really pick something that you love, even though it's not, we know pediatrics family practice, you don't make as much as a specialist, but if you want to enjoy what you do every day, pick something that you love to do. And now there's so many options. So, I mean, everything from clinical to administrative, to even non-clinical. There's just so many options now for doctors out there, and I think it's amazing. And so, again, if you get stuck in a rut and you don't like what you're doing, now you can, explore all these different options and not just be in a miserable job year after year. So yeah, so that's my advice to the newbies coming up.
Love it. Love it. Now, I
Yeah.
ask this question to all my guests. You're included. You're up next. So, Dr. White, finish this sentence. I'm not just a doc. I'm a.
I'm a hustler, entrepreneur, wife, friend, traveler, foodie, and
Keep
yeah.
going. You putting all the slashes afterwards. Keep going.
I think that's a lot. I'm a bon vivant. Yeah, everything. Everything. So everything I want to be is what I do. So
Love it.
no
Love
limits.
it. Hey, I love the answer. Dr. Nadine White, this was an amazing interview. I think the audience has learned a
Yeah.
lot about you. You are definitely a doc outside the box, and the way in which you're performing and the way in which you're living your life is truly awe-inspiring, and it really is an inspiration, to a lot of docs out there who are looking to do the same thing. And also at the same time, I'm sure if your mom was still alive, she'd be extremely proud of what you're doing right
Oh,
now, being
thank
able
you
to do
so much.
medicine as well as travel. So, big ups to
I
you.
appreciate that.
It's been amazing to watch your arc in blogging and in traveling. I look to what you do because I'd like to do something similar.
Oh,
Maybe not
wait,
within the
great.
travel world, but maybe obviously within podcasting. So I
Right.
just want to say, keep doing what you're doing. I want to acknowledge that you're doing amazing things, and I'd love to have you on the show. Maybe sometime in the future we could talk about some amazing other places that you've been to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do and showcasing what I believe in, that you can be a doc outside the box. You can do anything you want to do. And so I appreciate you having me.
That really was a great episode. I learned a ton from that episode, and I now know how to get me possibly a free hotel room or maybe even an upgrade. Thank you, Dr. White. Much appreciated. But for those who enjoyed this podcast, please, once again, show your love. Leave me some feedback or leave an Apple Podcast 5-star review, and then also share this or tweet this out to someone who you know will benefit from this. So look, I'm going to catch you guys on the next episode. But before I jet, remember one thing. We only got one life. Let's make it count and live outside the box. Peace.